The great chamber buzzed with voices speaking in dozens of alien languages. Ambassador Jake Morrison sat at the human table watching the council members talk among themselves. His hands stayed folded on the smooth surface as he listened to the translator devices convert the alien words into English. For 300 years humanity had been part of this council. They were always the newest members, trying to prove they belonged here, with species that had traveled the stars for thousands of years before humans even invented the wheel. The Zephyrian speaker stood up from its crystal chair. Its body caught the light and threw rainbow colors across the walls as it spoke. The human species has broken the preservation protocols too many times. They expand too fast. They build too many weapons. They are a threat to peace in our galaxy. Lisa Carter shifted in her seat next to Jake. She was the human military advisor, but she kept quiet, as Jake had told her to do. These charges were not new. The council always said humans bred too much and explored too aggressively. They wanted humanity to slow down and stay small. What the aliens called dangerous expansion, humans called survival. The ancient being called Vextara spoke from the high seat at the center of the chamber. Its species had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. Its voice was cold and mechanical. Humanity must reduce its population by 60% within 50 years. All military ships, except for basic defense vessels, must be destroyed. No more colonies beyond the 12 systems you already have. This is final. Jake Morrison stood up slowly. His voice was calm, but everyone in the chamber could hear it clearly. And if we refuse this demand, then humanity becomes a rogue species. We will deal with you as we deal with all threats to galactic peace. Jake asked for a break in the session. In the private room behind the main chamber, he looked at his team. Lisa Carter sat with her arms crossed. Dr. Alex Rodriguez, the scientist, stared at his tablet. Commander Ben Taylor from the Colonial Defense Force drummed his fingers on the table. Rachel Green, the economic advisor, was already running numbers on her computer. They all knew what the Council's ultimatum really meant. If humanity accepted these terms, their species would slowly die, cut population by more than half, destroy most of their ships, never expand to new worlds. It was a death sentence, delivered with polite words. There is another choice, Jake said. Quietly, we leave. All of us. Every human, everywhere. We disappear completely. The room went silent. Commander Taylor spoke first. The logistics would be incredible. Moving 4 billion people and all our ships and colonies. It would take years. Dr. Rodriguez nodded. But we could do it. The outer colonies have been working on long-range exploration ships. If we modified them for extended deep space travel, we could make it work. Rachel looked up from her calculations. We would need to liquidate everything, convert every asset to portable resources. It would be the biggest migration in human history. Jake made the decision that would change everything. Then we do it. We don't negotiate with them. We don't try to compromise. We just leave and never come back. When the council session started again, Jake delivered humanity's answer. His voice was steady and dignified. The human delegation declines your terms. We will leave council space within 5 years. Consider this our resignation from the Galactic Council. The chamber exploded with noise. Aliens jumped up from their seats shouting in their native languages. Some seemed angry. Others appeared confused. A few looked worried. But the humans walked out without saying another word. The corridor outside the chamber was long and empty. Jake's footsteps echoed as he led his team toward the exit. Lisa Carter caught up with him. "Sir, do you really think we can pull this off?" Jake stopped walking and turned to look back at the chamber doors. Through the thick walls they could still hear the aliens arguing loudly. "Lisa, we've been part of this council for 3 centuries. We've tried to fit in. We've tried to prove we belong. But they will never accept us as equals. They see us as a problem to be managed, not as partners, to be respected. So we run away? Commander Taylor asked. No, Ben. We choose freedom over slavery. We choose to write our own future, instead of letting them write it for us. Jake started walking again. Send a message to all human colonies and ships. Operation Exodus begins immediately. We have 5 years to pack up an entire civilization. Back. In the council chamber, the aliens were still arguing. The Centauri representative was demanding that humanity be declared rogue immediately. The hegemony delegate wanted to send warships to force compliance. Others suggested economic sanctions or diplomatic pressure. Prime Vextera called for order, but the shouting continued. Finally, it spoke loud enough to be heard over the noise. What exactly did the human ambassador mean by departure? Surely they cannot be serious about abandoning everything they have built. Ambassador Tulver from the Centauri Collective stood up. It must be a bluff. No species has ever attempted an intergalactic migration. The energy requirements alone would be impossible. They are trying to force us to negotiate. Perhaps we should call their bluff, suggested the hegemony delegate. If they truly intend to leave, then we should let them go. Good riddance to a troublesome species. But Dr. Zephian, the council historian, was studying his records with growing concern. In all our archives, there is no precedent for this. Species either comply with council directives, or they fight. None have ever chosen complete exodus. Meanwhile, Jake Morrison was already aboard the human transport ship heading back to Earth. He opened a secure channel to the Colonial Defense Headquarters. Commander Taylor's face appeared on the screen. Ben, I need you to contact every human colony, station, ship, and outpost. Tell them we're going home, all of us. And when we leave, there won't be a single human left in council space. What about the aliens, sir? They might try to stop us. Jake looked out the viewport at the alien space station, growing smaller behind them. Let them try. We're not asking for permission anymore. We're not explaining ourselves or justifying our decisions. We're simply leaving, and once we're gone, they can have their perfect orderly galaxy without any troublesome humans to worry about. The message went out across human space within hours. On colonies that had taken generations to build families, began the heartbreaking process of deciding what they could take and what they would have to leave behind. On mining stations that had operated for decades, workers started shutting down equipment and packing essential supplies. But there was something else in those messages. Something the aliens had never understood about humanity. When humans were pushed too far, they didn't break. They got stronger. They got more determined. They got united in ways that surprised even themselves. The Great Exodus had begun. The next 4 years became known as the Great Preparation. While the Galactic Council argued about humanity's decision, every human colony worked day and night to pack up their civilization. Captain Sarah Lewis stood on the observation deck of the orbital shipyards above New Geneva, colony watching thousands of ships being converted for the longest journey humans had ever attempted. The sight was both beautiful and heartbreaking. Ships that had been designed for travel between star systems were being rebuilt for intergalactic flight. Cargo holds were expanded. Life support systems were upgraded. Engines were modified to handle the massive distances they would need to cross. Commander Ryan Phillips joined her at the viewport with his daily report. Colony ship conversions are at 87% complete, Captain. The agricultural vessels are fully loaded and sealed. Dr. Martinez says the genetic archives are ready for transport. Sarah nodded but kept watching the ships. The scale of what they were doing was staggering. 12 colony worlds, hundreds of space stations, mining operations, research facilities. Over 4 billion humans preparing to vanish into the darkness between galaxies. Every family had to make impossible choices about what to take and what to leave forever. On Earth's moon, Dr. Helen Parker worked frantically with her team to preserve human culture. art and literature and music and scientific discoveries and philosophical works. Everything that made humanity unique had to be converted to digital files and stored in quantum memory banks. "We can't take the Louvre with us," she told her assistant Pete Johnson as they scanned another priceless painting. "We can't pack up the Great Wall of China, but we can take the memory of them." Pete looked up from his scanner. "Do you think we'll ever see Earth again, Doctor?" Helen paused in her work. It was a question everyone asked, but nobody could answer. "I don't know, Pete, but our children will have new worlds to call home. Maybe that's enough." The alien members of the Galactic Council watched the human preparations with growing alarm. Some species had expected humanity to change their minds at the last moment. Others thought it was an elaborate negotiating tactic. None of them truly believed 4 billion people would actually disappear into space. Ambassador Tulver requested a private meeting with Jake Morrison during one of the final diplomatic sessions. They met in a neutral conference room on the Council station. "This is insanity, Ambassador Morrison. Your species will die in the void between galaxies. Surely we can reach some compromise." Jake's response was calm and final. "We made our choice, Ambassador. In 6 months there won't be a single human ship in Council space. But why? We could negotiate new terms. Perhaps reduce the population requirements. Maybe allow some limited expansion." Jake stood up to leave. "You still don't understand. We're not negotiating anymore. We're not asking for permission. We're not begging for scraps from your table. We're leaving." Tulver watched the human ambassador walk away. Something cold settled in his stomach as he realized Jake Morrison was completely serious. The humans really were going to attempt the impossible. The evacuation began with the outer colonies. These were the newest human settlements, farthest from Earth. They had smaller populations and fewer facilities to abandon. Captain Tony Garcia commanded the last transport, leaving New Prosperity Mining Colony. As his ship lifted away from the planet's surface, he transmitted the final message. "New Prosperity Colony evacuated. Population 0. Infrastructure abandoned. The lights are going out." Similar messages came from colonies across human space: New Boston, Port Liberty, Freedoms, and Harmony Station. One by one, the lights of human civilization winked out as entire populations loaded onto the great arc ships. The hardest evacuations were the core worlds, where humans had lived for generations. On New Terra, families gathered in the central plaza. One last time, children who had been born on this world looked around at the only home they had ever known. Parents tried to explain why they had to leave everything behind. Mary Johnson held her 6-year-old daughter Emma as they boarded the colony ship Destiny's Call. Emma pointed back at their house visible through the transport window. "Mommy, why can't we take our house with us?" Mary struggled to find words her daughter would understand. "Because we're going to build new houses, baby. Better houses on worlds where no one can tell us we don't belong." The ship's filled with people, carrying suitcases and boxes and whatever. Precious items they couldn't bear to leave behind. Photo albums, and family heirlooms, and children's toys. The practical items needed for survival, but also the sentimental objects that made life worth living. Dr. Andy Parker supervised the loading of the scientific equipment aboard the research vessel New Horizons. Laboratories and computers, and genetic samples and seed banks. Everything needed to restart human civilization, somewhere in the distant Andromeda galaxy. "Are you sure about the navigation data, Doctor?" asked his assistant Carol White as they secured the last of the quantum computers. Andy checked his calculations again. "The course is plotted, Carol. 2.5 million light-years to Andromeda. It'll take us about 10 years at maximum sustainable speed. 10 years in space, no planets, no open sky. But freedom, Carol. Complete freedom to be what we choose to be." The final phase began with the evacuation of Earth itself. The mother world that had given birth to humanity would be left empty. Ancient cities and monuments and forests and oceans, all abandoned so that humanity could remain free. Prime Minister Kate Wilson stood in the empty halls of the United Nations building in New York. Her footsteps echoed as she walked past portraits of world leaders from centuries past, men and women who had dreamed of humanity reaching for the stars. They never imagined their descendants would have to flee those stars to remain human. She placed a final message in the building's central computer. To whoever finds this record, we were the human species. We lived on this world for thousands of years. We reached out to the galaxy, hoping to find friends and partners. Instead, we found those who would control us. So we left. Not in anger, but in hope. We go to write our own story among distant stars. Remember us as we were, free. The great colony ships gathered at the edge of human space, hundreds of vessels carrying the entire human race. The sight was magnificent and terrible. Ships, designed to carry thousands, now held millions. Every available space packed with people and supplies and hope. Admiral Kate Foster took command of the fleet from the flagship, New Dawn. She had been chosen to lead humanity into the unknown, a responsibility that weighed heavier than the gravity of any world. Fleet Status Commander Walsh. Commander Steve Walsh consulted his displays. All ships report, ready for departure, Admiral. Population count 4.2 billion. Supplies loaded for extended voyage. Course plotted for Andromeda Galaxy. Kate looked out at the fleet stretching into the distance. So many ships, so many lives depending on decisions she would make in the years ahead. Signal all vessels. Prepare for departure. We're going home. Home, Admiral. Wherever we end up, Commander. That will be home. The human fleet began its acceleration toward the galactic rim. Behind them, the 12 colony worlds sat empty and dark. Ahead lay the void between galaxies and whatever waited beyond. But they went together as one people, united by the simple desire to remain free. The exodus had begun, and there was no turning back. 6 months after humanity vanished from Council space, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. For the first time in their long history, they faced something completely new. An entire civilization had simply disappeared without a trace. Prime Vexthera reviewed the reports with growing unease, confirmed the status of all former human territories. Intelligence Director Kothra of the Hegemony delivered the disturbing news. Complete evacuation confirmed. Every colony, every outpost, every mining station. They left basic buildings behind, but took everything valuable. Our long-range sensors lost all trace of their ships beyond the galactic edge. The council chamber fell silent. The implications were staggering. Humanity had not just left their space. They had erased themselves from galactic civilization completely. No forwarding address. No communication channels. No way to contact them, even if the council wanted to negotiate. Ambassador Kelther of the Void Swimmers spoke what many were thinking. They actually did it. They chose extinction over compliance. We don't know they're extinct, protested Ambassador Kelther. Perhaps they found refuge in another part of our galaxy. Dr. Zephian, the council historian, pulled up his research files. Impossible. Our sensor networks cover the entire galaxy. They would have detected human ships. The only conclusion is that humanity attempted intergalactic travel. The word hung in the air, like a death sentence. Intergalactic travel was theoretical at best. The distances involved were beyond imagination. The energy requirements would drain entire star systems. No species in galactic history had ever succeeded at such a journey. Then we killed them, whispered Ambassador Veltar of the Centauri Collective. We forced them to attempt the impossible. Meanwhile, 50,000 light-years beyond the galaxy's edge, the human fleet pressed through the cosmic void. The journey was harder than anyone had imagined. Ships designed for travel between stars struggled with the constant strain of intergalactic flight. Admiral Kate Foster commanded from the bridge of New Dawn. The converted battlecruiser had become the mobile capital of human civilization. Its corridors bustled with government officials and military personnel and civilian administrators, all trying to manage a nation that existed only in space. Fleet Status Commander Walsh. Commander Steve Walsh checked his reports. Maintaining formation across all battle groups. Admiral. Agricultural ships report stable food production. Medical teams report acceptable health levels, but psychological counseling requests are up 15%. Dr. Claire Mason, the fleet's chief psychologist, had been expecting this. Admiral, we need to discuss the long-term effects. We're asking entire generations to live and die in ships, never seeing a planet or breathing natural air. The mental strain is enormous. Admiral Foster nodded grimly. She had seen the reports herself. Depression and anxiety were spreading through the fleet like a disease. Some people had stopped eating. Others refused to leave their quarters. A few had even attempted suicide rather than face years more in the endless dark. What do you recommend, Doctor? We need to give people hope, Admiral. Something to look forward to. The promise that this journey has meaning. Kate looked out at the stars streaming past the viewport. They chose this, Claire. We all did. We knew the price when we left. But, did the children choose it? The ones born during this journey, who know nothing but ship corridors and recycled air? It was a fair question. Thousands of children had been born since the Exodus began. They learned about planets and open skies from school lessons and computer simulations. To them, Earth was just a story their parents told. Teacher Maria Santos worked with 12-year-olds in the education section of colony ship Hope's Dream. Today she was showing them holographic images of Earth's oceans. Waves crashed against sandy beaches, while seagulls cried overhead. Will we ever see a real ocean, Miss Santos? Asked Billy Chen, raising his small hand. The question that haunted every adult hung in the classroom air. Maria chose hope over despair. Someday, Billy, we're traveling to a new galaxy where we'll find worlds with oceans of their own. But when Miss Santos, my parents say it will take many more years. Good things take time, Billy. Your parents left everything behind, so you could grow up free. That's worth waiting for. But the waiting was getting harder every day. Ship after ship reported mechanical failures as systems pushed beyond their design limits finally broke down. The engineering crews worked around the clock, but some problems couldn't be fixed with spare parts and determination. Captain Don Rodriguez commanded the colony ship New Freedom when its main engine failed 3 years into the journey. His ship carried 50,000 people, including his own wife and 2 young sons. Engineering report. He called to his chief engineer, Lisa Park. It's the primary fusion reactor, Captain. The magnetic containment field is degrading. We can't maintain thrust much longer. Dan stared at the status displays. Without engines, his ship would fall behind the fleet. 50,000 people would be left to drift in the void while their families and friends continued toward Andromeda. How long do we have? Maybe 6 hours before complete failure. Dan opened the channel to Admiral Foster. New Dawn, this is New Freedom. We have a critical situation. The next hours became a desperate race against time. Engineering teams from nearby ships transferred to New Freedom carrying spare parts and expertise. Admiral Foster herself came aboard to coordinate the repair effort. They worked in the cramped engine compartments while the reactor grew more unstable. Radiation levels climbed toward dangerous levels. The magnetic field flickered and sparked as engineers tried to stabilize the containment system. Got it? Shouted Lisa Park as the field solidified. Reactor stable. Engine thrust restored. The celebration was brief but heartfelt. 50,000 lives saved by skill and determination, and the refusal to leave anyone behind. It was humanity, at its best even in the darkest circumstances. But the incident reminded everyone how precarious their situation really was. They were 4 billion people trapped between galaxies with nowhere to run if things went wrong. Every day brought new challenges that tested their resolve and their unity. Back in the Milky Way, the consequences of humanity's absence were becoming impossible to ignore. The empty human colonies had created a power vacuum that various species rushed to fill. Border disputes erupted as neighboring civilizations claimed abandoned worlds. The hegemony moved warships into the former New Terra system, claiming it as compensation for unpaid trade debts. The Centauri Collective responded by occupying 3 former human mining colonies. The Crystalline Republic declared all abandoned human infrastructure to be free salvage. The situation is deteriorating rapidly, reported General Morden to the Emergency Council session. We have active conflicts in 7 former human systems. Trade routes are being disrupted. Economic markets are collapsing. What none of the council members had realized was how humanity's presence had helped maintain galactic stability. Not because humans were particularly powerful or influential, but because they were unpredictable enough that other species hesitated to start conflicts that might draw human attention. The humans were never our strongest allies, observed Ambassador Kelfer, but they were wild enough that no one wanted to risk making them angry. Their absence has removed a crucial element of uncertainty that kept potential aggressors cautious. Dr. Zephian reviewed his historical analysis with growing alarm. In the past, when humans were involved in galactic disputes, they often proposed unexpected solutions that prevented wars. Their different perspective helped us see alternatives to conflict. Prime Vex Thora struggled to maintain order as the Council dissolved into accusations and threats. We must find a way to restore stability. Perhaps if we sent a message to the humans. What message? Demanded Ambassador Tolver. We don't know where they went. We don't even know if they're still alive. The truth was settling over the Council, like a heavy weight. They had driven away the one species that might have helped them solve the crisis they now faced. In trying to control humanity, they had lost something precious and irreplaceable. Somewhere in the void between galaxies, the human fleet continued its long journey toward an uncertain future. They carried with them the hope of freedom and the dream of worlds where they could build something better than what they had left behind. 2 years after humanity's departure, the Galactic Council faced the worst crisis in their recorded history. The emergency session convened as reports of warfare flooded in from across former human territory. What had started as simple border disputes had exploded into open conflicts that threatened to tear the galaxy apart. General Morden, of the Regilian Armed Forces, delivered his report with barely controlled anger. The situation has become a complete disaster. The Hegemony and Centauri Collective are fighting a full-scale war over the New Terra system. The Crystalline Republic has occupied 12 former human mining worlds, leading to resource conflicts with 6 neighboring species. We have active combat in 47 star systems. Prime Vex Thora struggled to maintain order as delegates shouted accusations at each other across the chamber. Species that had maintained peaceful relations for centuries were now threatening each other with military action. The careful balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable was crumbling. How did it come to this? Demanded Ambassador Kelther. We are supposed to be civilized beings, not barbarians fighting over scraps. Dr. Zephian pulled up his analysis files with shaking hands. I have been studying our historical records. In every major galactic dispute over the past 3 centuries, humanity played a role in finding peaceful solutions, not because they were mediators, but because their unpredictable nature forced other species to consider alternatives to warfare. The revelation hit the Council like a physical blow. Ambassador Veltar spoke what many were thinking. You mean the humans were keeping us from destroying each other? Without realizing it, yes. Their mere presence made aggression risky because no one knew how they might respond. Other species chose negotiation over conflict rather than face the possibility of human intervention. Ambassador Tulver stood up slowly. And we have not just condemned one species to death, we have condemned our entire civilization to chaos. Meanwhile, the human fleet was 5 years into their journey toward Andromeda. The constant strain of deep space travel was taking its toll on both ships and people. Equipment failures were becoming more frequent. Morale was dropping as the endless void wore down even the strongest spirits. Admiral Foster stood in the memorial garden aboard New Dawn, looking at holographic displays showing the names of those who had died during the journey. Over 30,000 humans had perished from accidents and illness and despair. Each name represented a life sacrificed for the dream of freedom. Captain Dan Rodriguez joined her among the glowing memorials. The psychological reports are getting worse, Admiral. Dr. Mason estimates. We might lose another 10% of the population to depression-related deaths if we don't find ways to give people hope. Foster's voice carried the weight of command and the burden of responsibility for 4 billion lives. Then we create hope, Dan. We expand the recreational programs. We start detailed planning for colonization. We remind people why we chose this path. Dr. Andy Parker had been working on long-range scans of their destination galaxy. His latest discovery brought both excitement and concern to the fleet leadership. The Andromeda galaxy was not the empty wilderness they had hoped to find. We're detecting multiple artificial signals, Admiral, he reported to the command staff. At least 40 star systems showing signs of advanced civilization. Andromeda is inhabited. The implications were staggering. Humanity was heading toward another encounter with alien species. After their experience with the Galactic Council, the prospect of dealing with new aliens filled many people with dread. Are they unified like our galaxy's council? Asked Admiral Foster. Dr. Parker studied his data carefully. The signals appear to be coming from scattered locations across the galaxy. No sign of a central government or unified civilization. They seem to be separate species or nations. That might be better for us, observed Captain Rodriguez. We won't be dealing with one massive power structure. We can choose who to contact and how to approach them. But first they had to survive the rest of their journey. The human fleet was still 3 years away from Andromeda, and the ships were showing serious signs of wear. Life support systems were breaking down faster than they could be repaired. Food production was declining as agricultural equipment failed. Captain Lisa Park commanded the agricultural ship Green Valley. Her vessel fed nearly 200,000 people, but the hydroponic farms were struggling with equipment failures and contamination problems. How bad is it, Lisa? Asked her chief botanist, Dr. Carol White, as they inspected another failed growing chamber. We're losing about 5% of our food production each month. At this rate, we'll have critical shortages before we reach Andromeda. Can we fix the equipment? Lisa shook her head. We're running out of spare parts. The systems were designed for interstellar travel, not a decade-long journey through empty space. Similar problems plagued ships throughout the fleet. The medical vessels were running low on pharmaceutical supplies. The manufacturing ships could not replace broken components fast enough. The housing ships were overcrowded as people moved from vessels with failed life support systems. Yet somehow, humanity endured. Families shared cramped quarters without complaint. Engineers worked impossible hours to keep critical systems running. Teachers continued educating children who had never seen a planet. Artists created beauty in the darkness to keep hope alive. Back in the Milky Way, the Galactic War was consuming resources at an unsustainable rate. Entire star systems were becoming uninhabitable as increasingly powerful weapons turned planets into radioactive wastelands. What had taken millennia to build was being destroyed in years. Military casualties now exceed 100 million beings across all species, reported the surviving members of the Military Council. Economic infrastructure has been completely destroyed in former human space. We estimate it will take 3 centuries to rebuild what has been lost in just 2 years of warfare. The Galactic Council had effectively ceased to exist. In its place were military alliances locked in seemingly endless conflict. The dream of galactic unity lay in ruins destroyed by the very arrogance that had driven humanity away. Some council members began to understand what they had lost. Ambassador Kelthur met secretly with other moderate delegates in the ruins of a space station destroyed by hegemony forces. "We made a terrible mistake," he said quietly. "The humans were never our enemies. They were the one element that kept us from destroying ourselves." "What can we do?" asked Ambassador Veltar. "We don't even know if they're still alive." "Nothing. We can do nothing but watch our civilization tear itself apart and remember that we chose this path." Dr. Zephian had been working on a project in secret. Using the Council's most powerful communication arrays, he had been broadcasting a message toward the Andromeda Galaxy. A message of apology and regret aimed at empty space in the desperate hope that somehow it might reach human ears. "Humanity, if you can hear this transmission, we acknowledge our error. We drove you away in our arrogance, and now we face the consequences of our actions. Our galaxy burns with wars that you might have helped prevent. We do not ask for your return because we know we do not deserve your forgiveness. We only ask that you remember us as we were before. Fear made us foolish. May you find in distant stars what we could not give you here: peace and freedom and the chance to grow into what you were meant to become." The message broadcast into the void carrying the regrets of an entire galactic civilization. Whether it would ever reach its intended recipients was unknown, but it represented the first honest acknowledgement of what the Council had truly lost when they forced humanity to choose between submission and exile. In the Andromeda Galaxy, human children born during the journey looked through viewports at strange stars and dreamed of worlds they might someday call home. They carried no memory of the galaxy their parents had fled. To them the future was full of possibility rather than regret. The long journey was almost over, but the real test was just beginning. 8 years after leaving the Milky Way, the human fleet finally approached the outer edge of the Andromeda Galaxy. Admiral Forster stood on the bridge of New Dawn watching the spiral arms of their new home grow larger on the display screens. After a decade of traveling through empty void, they were about to enter a galaxy filled with alien civilizations. "Long-range sensors are detecting multiple signals, Admiral," reported Dr. Andy Parker from his science station. "At least 60 different communication frequencies. The aliens here are definitely active, but they don't seem to be coordinating with each other." Foster studied the incoming data with relief. "So no Galactic Council waiting to give us ultimatums?" "No, Admiral. These appear to be independent civilizations scattered across the galaxy. Some seem to be confined to single star systems. Others control small regions of space. Nothing like the unified government we left behind." Commander Steve Walsh looked up from his tactical displays. "That could work in our favor. We can choose who to contact and how to approach them. Maybe even find empty regions where we can settle without bothering anyone." The thought of finally having planets to walk on again filled the fleet with excitement. Children who had been born during the journey pressed against viewports, trying to catch glimpses of the stars that would become their new homes. Adults, who had given up everything for freedom, felt hope returning after years of doubt. Dr. Helen Parker had continued her work as the fleet's historian throughout the journey. She had documented not just their travels, but the transformation of human society during 8 years in space. Living in ships had changed humanity in fundamental ways that even she was still trying to understand. "We're not the same species that left the Milky Way," she wrote in her daily journal. 8 years of shared hardship has made us more united than we ever were on separate worlds. We've learned that survival depends on cooperation, that freedom requires sacrifice, that sometimes the only way to win is to refuse to play by someone else's rules. The first human scouts entered Andromeda's outer regions and began detailed surveys of potential settlement areas. What they found exceeded their wildest hopes. Dozens of star systems with habitable planets showed no signs of indigenous life. Worlds where humanity could build new colonies without displacing anyone. Captain Tony Garcia led the advanced survey team aboard the scout ship, Pathfinder. His job was to identify the best locations for humanity's first settlements in their new galaxy. The responsibility was enormous, but the possibilities were endless. Third planet in the Kepler system looks perfect, he reported to Admiral Foster. Breathable atmosphere, liquid water. No signs of intelligent life. It's like Earth, but with purple oceans and 2 small moons. Similar reports came from other scout teams. World after world of possibilities. Some were desert planets perfect for mining operations. Others were garden worlds ideal for agriculture. A few were ocean planets that could support massive populations. Foster made the decision that would determine humanity's future in Andromeda. We'll establish our first colony on New Haven in the Kepler system. All volunteers for the initial settlement should report to transport ships within 48 hours. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of thousands of people volunteered to be among the first humans to set foot on a planet in 8 years. Families packed their belongings once again, but this time with joy instead of sadness. They were finally going home. The colony ships descended through New Haven's atmosphere as billions of humans watched on their communication screens. The first colonists stepped out onto alien soil and breathed air that had never been touched by human lungs. They planted flags and built shelters and started the process of creating a new world. But even as humanity celebrated their arrival in Andromeda, the Milky Way continued its descent into chaos. The Galactic War had spread to over 2/3 of inhabited systems. Ancient civilizations were destroying each other with weapons that left entire planets uninhabitable. The Galactic Council met for what would be their final session in the ruins of their once grand chamber. Half the delegate seats stood empty. Their occupants were either dead or too busy fighting wars to attend diplomatic meetings. Prime Vexthera looked around at the handful of surviving council members. We are gathered here to formally dissolve the Galactic Council. Our great experiment in united government has failed. Ambassador Kelthor spoke for many when he said, "We drove away the one species that might have saved us. In our arrogance, we believed we knew what was best for everyone. Now we face the consequences of that hubris." Dr. Zephian had been monitoring his secret communication array, hoping for some response to his messages. "I have been broadcasting our apologies toward Andromeda for 3 years. There has been no reply. Either they cannot hear us or they choose not to answer. Perhaps that is for the best," said Ambassador Veltar. "We have no right to ask for their forgiveness. They chose freedom over our control. We chose war over their wisdom." In the depths of space, the final message from the dying Galactic Council played on repeat. A desperate transmission aimed at the Andromeda Galaxy, carrying the regrets of an entire civilization. "Humanity, we know you can never forgive what we did to you. We forced you to choose between your freedom and your home. You chose freedom, and we hated you for it. Now our galaxy burns with conflicts you might have helped us avoid. We do not ask you to return because we know we do not deserve your presence. We only ask that you remember us as we could have been instead of what we became. Build something better in your new home. Learn from our mistakes. Show the universe what we failed to become." Meanwhile, in Andromeda, human colonies were spreading across dozens of star systems. Each settlement was built on principles learned during their long journey. Cooperation over competition, unity over division, freedom over control. The native species of Andromeda watched humanity's arrival with curiosity rather than fear. These aliens had never formed a galactic government. They had never tried to control each other's growth or expansion. When human ambassadors made contact, they were welcomed as new neighbors rather than potential threats. Ambassador Jake Morrison, who had led humanity's exodus, now served as their representative to the His first meeting with the Stellar Commonwealth was held on a neutral space station orbiting a binary star system. "We come seeking friendship and trade," he told the assembled alien delegates. "We ask for nothing but the freedom to build our own futures on worlds that need no owners." The response from Commonwealth Speaker Zarthel was everything the Galactic Council had never been. "Welcome to Andromeda, humans. We are curious about your knowledge and your culture. Perhaps we can learn from each other without trying to control each other." It was the beginning of a new chapter in human history, not as subjects or controlled members of someone else's empire, but as free beings choosing their own path among the stars. Dr. Helen Parker stood on the observation deck of New Dawn, watching human ships spread across their new galaxy. Children who had been born during the Exodus were now adults, building cities on alien worlds. The generation that remembered Earth was aging, but their sacrifice had given birth to something magnificent. "We paid a terrible price for our freedom," she wrote in her final journal entry. "We lost our home, and many of our people died during the long journey. But we gained something precious. The knowledge that freedom is worth any sacrifice, that unity can overcome any challenge, that sometimes the only way to win is to walk away from a game rigged against you." In the ruins of the Milky Way, the few surviving civilizations finally understood what they had lost. They had driven away not just another species, but the hope of what their galaxy could have become. The last light of humanity had departed and taken with it the possibility of peace. But in Andromeda, that light burned brighter than ever. Humanity had found not just new worlds, but new purpose. They built cities that welcomed all species. They formed alliances based on mutual respect instead of control. They proved that freedom and unity were not opposites, but partners in creating something beautiful. The Great Exodus was over. The age of human freedom in Andromeda had begun.